feeling like I lost all the progress, all these like a decade worth of work and money and effort is now like gone. You go into this spiral of depression. Like, what am I gonna do now? And you know, once it clicked that all of it stemmed from fear, and I just kept diving into the concept of it and like reading as many things as I can about fear and like why am I afraid and am I afraid? What does that even look like? And just going into a deep dive as far as the questioning of myself goes, questioning of decisions and outcomes and all these things. It hit me.
First off, obviously, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, Laith.
Thank you for
Hanging out with
having me.
me. Because really, right now, it's just me and you and my dog hanging out, but other people may potentially hear this. I originally met Laith, I want to say, it's probably about 3 years ago, roughly. And we worked together in an agreement where I was just sharing my perspective where I could, and he resonated with some of my content. I think we kind of connected on this like historically analytical, logical minded framework. And at the time, he was studying rigorously to pass the bar with the law stuff in London. And this part of his life was like the main thing, and there was a lot of stress around it. But a lot of shit has changed. So maybe to start us off, Laith, what do you think contributed to bringing you to where you are now? Because now you're doing so much cool shit. Like, what helped you come out of that, and what have you learned in that, I guess?
It's a good question.
Yeah,
Yeah,
however you want, however you want to
every
answer it.
podcast, every response is always like, "That's a good question." That's how I
Give
want
me a
to
moment,
let
give me
it
a
go.
moment, and I'll be right back with you.
Well, first of all, yeah, thank you for having me, dude. This is sick. I mean, it's always super like comfortable having a conversation with you. It never feels like it's some people you talk to, it feels like a chore. With you, it just kind of flows, and I like that.
Thank you, brother. Same.
Yeah, thank you for having me. What brought me here? Damn.
What shifted from the version of you that was in the note, like you were kind of stressed, right? Like you were stressed in that world.
Yeah, you caught me at a bad time. I mean, I kind of reached out to you at a bad time. I'd never really explored what it was like to speak to someone on that level. And when I saw your content pop up and it said book a call, I was like, yeah, let's try it out. Why not?
Yeah.
And we go on the call. We have a really cool conversation. I think we were supposed to only talk for like 15 minutes. I think we spoke for like an hour.
Yeah, on
And
that
you
first
like
call,
really,
yeah.
yeah, you really opened up the space for me, and you properly. I was like talking. I was like
Yeah.
just venting to you, and you sat there and you listened. There was a lot going on. I was doing the bar. I had just moved into my friend's apartment. I was sleeping on the couch as I was also working full time at a law firm that was not the best of law firms in the world. They were difficult. Let me just say that. And we didn't see eye to eye, and it was this constant, perpetual argument slash like conflict based. And I mean, the job itself is conflict based. Like you're always going after somebody or someone coming after you. So it's always conflict. But to have conflict at home base, while fighting outside, it just was like you're in constant warfare with everything. And to add to that, doing the bar as well, which is pretty rigorous, like you said, put me in a pretty stressful zone, you know, amongst other things, going on back home and my family. And it was just like this whirlwind of stuff going on about like 3 years ago now. Wow. And we talked a lot. I went back and forth with you. The exact moment of like the catalyst of this like chemical reaction that I couldn't turn around was a really bad encounter at work, and it got out of hand. Everybody was shouting and it was not good, and I was like, nothing is worth this kind of treatment. No job, no like money or any achievement that I've attached my my identity slash my like what's the word, self-worth onto, and decided that my self-worth is not attached to any of that, and that I'm more than what I've put myself to be. And I took a leap of faith and quit my job, moved back home. So I was in Leeds at the time in the UK, and moved back home to Abu Dhabi in the UAE where my family is, which was it was a big shock on my whole like system after living alone for 10 years, like self-sufficient. Graduated law school, been working for a couple of years doing the bar. I'd come into a stage where I'm like in full adult mode, per se. And then suddenly to go back to like teleport back into like, oh, you're back at home with your parents was shocking for me. I didn't really react to it the best. I mean, I loved them. They were amazing. They took me in, and they kind of understood where I was mentally. Like, they didn't really give me a hard time at all. They were brilliant. But they're still like your parents. So there's always that kind of interaction.
Were they still wanting you to pursue law at that point?
Oh,
or?
yeah. I mean, for the following year from being back, I continued to work on the bar exam. And that.
So the main thing at that moment, not to cut you off, the main thing at that moment was you were done with that particular outfit that you were working with, that internship, but you weren't done with law yet at that point.
I think that is when I had logged off. I mean, I might have had some attachment left to it simply from like a career perspective, identity perspective, financial career perspective, all that stuff. I was pretty much like a trainee solicitor, on track to become a solicitor and start to make some good money and build a career and all that stuff. But I think it was not one event. It was an amalgamation of events that went down throughout the years that I've worked. And there was just that one moment where it was the straw, and everything kind of came together in my mind that I was like, maybe this is just not it right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, just because I'm trying to recall, like back in that time where when you left and came back home, is that when you were still doing some light studying to pass the bar?
Yeah, so I was like half-assing the studying pretty much.
I think I remember that, yeah.
I wasn't really putting my back into it. I wasn't locked in.
Yeah, you'd already your soul had already like logged. Your soul had already made the decision, and everything else was just catching up.
I dispatched for sure.
Yeah.
I dispatched from that world at that time, but I kind of kept going because I'd already paid money for my course, like the bar course, and for the exams themselves being booked, and all those, and also all that money that got pumped into it, like thousands of pounds that were put into. Not including my like actual law degree, that was also a lot of money. It just felt like a sunken cost.
Mm-hmm.
So there was also that.
Does it feel that way now?
Not anymore. I mean, because like you said earlier, this kind of analytical perspective kicks in sometimes, and if I look at things super objectively and like super like number based and just like straightforward without any magic. It's like, yeah, sometimes I'm like, yeah, that would have been probably like not that bad of an idea to like put my back into it and really commit to at least the exam and then like decide not to do it. Coming from a place of decision rather than like forcing myself. Because once I didn't really put the work in, I kind of locked myself out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I kind of ebb and flow between that thought process. I wouldn't necessarily call it a regret, but there is that part of my mind that visits the possibility of what things would have looked like. Yeah, for sure.
So, as much as like part of me is like, this is going to sound like a plug, but for me to help understand context, when you and I first started working together, is there anything in particular that we discussed that you think may have contributed to this opening, whether it be taking time away from the screens, or is there anything that you can recall that was like kind of really helpful from what we discussed?
And there was a number of factors. It was the collection of the habit changes, including, not looking at the phone when you wake up, trying not to look before going to bed, and being more aware, looking at things from a viewer perspective rather than being so engulfed in the emotions of everything. Um, there was a set of things that at the time helped me to kind of see things clearer and also see that it's not the end of the world. I think I had so much attached onto the outcome, and
Hmm.
the process was just eluding me. I couldn't step into the process because the outcome was all I thought about. Um, so I think that was a big part of it. Yeah, just looking into the process more, like just like even.
Just to fast forward real quick, and I know we're
Mm,
getting there, but now in what you're doing with your current pursuit, your current mission, your current all the stuff, I would venture to believe that you are far less focused on outcome and you are far more focused on
mm.
process of
Oh yeah.
everything.
Oh yeah, big time, big time. It was it was a very intentional and conscious decision to instill that thought into the like pillars of building this. Because I had, after coming back, taking that, that metaphysical uppercut of like where I am right now, and like feeling like I lost all the progress, all these like a decade worth of work and money and effort is now like gone. You go into this spiral of depression. Like, what am I gonna do now? And uh, you know, once it clicked that all of it stemmed from fear, and I just kept diving into the concept of it and like reading as many things as I can about fear and like why am I afraid and am I afraid? What does that even look like? And just going into a deep dive as far as the questioning of myself goes, questioning of decisions and outcomes and all these things. Um, it hit me, I kind of like it was it was an epiphany moment to a large extent. Like the idea of what I want to give context to the people. When I came back, I wasn't really doing much. I was working on projects here and there, making enough money to kind of sustain myself here and there. But I still felt like completely empty. I was going to job interviews. I wasn't really, but I've always wanted to build something of my own. And throughout the process, thinking about it, I know that I've been climbing for over, I don't know, 6 to 7 years probably. And I was like, I love doing this thing. Every time I'm doing it, I'm pretty happy. I want to be able to monetize this without losing the authenticity of it, keeping the love that I have for it. And I was like, but there's a lot of people doing it in many different shapes. The people have gyms or people have, products for it. People have different approaches to monetizing this sport now. But for me, it was because I was so intentional about the process. I really dove deep into the concept of fear. And that is largely what we're focused on. So the company is called Lawza, like I said, which means almond. Now, the reasoning for the name will also explain everything else. Uh, the amygdala in the brain, in charge of your fight or flight response, and pretty much the most primal part of your body, uh, also referred to as like the lizard brain, like the reptilian, old school, like fundamental, rudimentary part of your brain is in that fight or flight mode. And conveniently, that's shaped like an almond. And in Arabic, it's called the Lawza de Maria, which means the almond of the brain. That's what it's
Huh.
named like scientifically in Arabic biology.
Very cool
And
name for your outfit. That's awesome.
thank you, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of had a dream that I was falling, and I woke up like pretty like scared, like sweating and stuff, and I'd fallen from like this big cliff. And I remember watching this thing about Alex Honnold a while back. You know his movie Free Solo, the
I don't
guy
know
who
if it's me.
climbed El Cap in Yosemite.
I don't think I've seen it.
I gotta show you that. It's one of the most insane human feats ever recorded. He climbed like sheer granite rock in like 4 hours. It's unheard of. It's revolutionary to not just
Yeah.
sport, to like athleticism in general in every capacity. But away from glazing Alex Honnold, there's a part in the documentary where they do testing on his brain, So they put him in this MRI and they flash all these photos in his head, in front of his head, and to see like how his brain responds to stimuli. And versus other people who've done the same test, things that show up that you get like a, you know, a bee, a keyboard, a table, a demon, a notebook, you know, and they just see these spikes in how your brain in that split second responses. And his amygdala just didn't fire like people did, like other people did in the tests. So the question, the biological, psychological question was like, is he like this because he was born like this, or is he like this because of the years of training and conditioning and putting himself in scary situations? And they didn't really give us an answer. It was more like an open-ended question. But that was the question I was ruminating on. Is it like, is this something that you're born with, this like fearlessness, or is it something that you can cultivate?
Right.
And my experience dealing with fear ever since I was a kid was pretty like head on. Like if I was scared of something, I mean, I remember being a scared kid to a lot of things, but when I reached a certain age where I didn't want to be afraid anymore, I would just really tackle something. Like I was afraid of heights. One summer we were in Jordan diving off the diving boards, and I saw all these kids going up and jumping. I went up and looked down and my heart sank. And I was like, this is terrifying. And I remember coming down, like not doing the jump and feeling like, whoa, I really back away. And I was like, no. Went back up, didn't look down, held the end of the railing and just sprinted. Like gave it my all. And by the end of that summer, I was like diving headfirst from that diving board. I'd fallen in love with it, that feeling of floating in midair and like really dealing with fear. Like, because every time you jump, you will experience this much of fear, even if you've done it a million times. I don't care how, if you're a diving pro, there's that split second where your heart goes with the second you leave the diving board. Anyway, also, like I've had other stories where I've dealt with fear. We can go into that. But I was curious. I was like, oh, I don't really experience that the same way people. So when I go climbing with people, I kind of like just jump to holds, and not because I'm like a natural talent, just because it's kind of like, you might argue, comes from a place of like negligence at the start. It wasn't exactly like bravery. It was kind of like this false sense of invincibility that I had. Mm-hmm. And people were maybe more reasonable with their approaches. And I was curious, like, why do I feel like that? And some people don't. Dove deeper into it, spoke to a bunch of people that, you know, I've been climbing with for years, and asked them, like, you know, what was that for you? And everybody had a different response. And then I realized, like, oh, there isn't an answer. The answer is it depends. That's the lawyer.
And it's malleable too. Man, this is an amazing. I'm really, really excited for this conversation that we're having, and there's a really good chance we're going to end up needing a part two. I know we still have another 30 or 40 minutes, but there's so much that I would love to talk to you about. But I'm loving just kind of riding where your mind goes. But since we're here in this moment, I would like to speak like my perspective on fear for a second. So I recognize that, like, and it's been echoed for a long time, if you go to your fear, you typically are going to grow through that process. But I will also look at it and say, there could be someone who has, from my perspective, like an unhealthy relationship with it, where, say, all they do is go to their fear, and they're constantly jumping off of cliffs, and that's all they're doing. They're not. That's where they source everything from, right? Like, it's kind of like someone who jogs and they jog like a military outfit, and they got all the gear on, their fucking gun, their veins are popping, and like everything comes from this, you know? So on one side of the coin, I'm with it. But I also recognize, like, for the rest of our lives, we're gonna have resistance that shows up that's an echo of fear, and you're never gonna run out of shit that is like that to go to. And so many people need to find the way to do that in their life, just in like the moments of fear and what the boss says and shit, right? Not everybody needs to go and start jumping off of cliffs right out of the gate. But if that's something that you feel called to do, to experience, like, you know, and it's safe and all that stuff, whatever, obviously reach out to Laith and get his perspective, because he's a really grounded individual in this area. But, you know, another thing people will say, I think Zig Ziglar used to say, fear is false evidence appearing real. And I think when you step back to the macro perspective of you are a soul before you inhabit a body, you can really say that's true because you are going to grow through any resistance that you go through. But that said, like, I just feel it's worth noting for a moment, at least just from, for me, that like there's so much value in all that you're saying. And I want to go down all these roads, like the massive waves that you've ridden and like your long journeys on foot without like a plan. Like you've done some epic shit. And I think that there's so much value in going to nature and meeting your fears. But some people might have one, I'll tell you, like for me, and then I'll turn it back over to you. For me, right? Like there's one that like, I don't know, man. Like, and that's being dropped in the middle of an ocean. Like in theory, like you're out there and you ain't got nothing, right? Like if I was in that situation, I would clearly have my fight or flight would turn on. But in the regular daily stuff that my nervous system used to fucking go manic about God knows whatever random daily shit, like that's all gone. But there's certainly still pockets. Now, I'm not going to say, hey, Laith, will you get me on a plane and go drop me out there so I can face it? I'm like, it's not necessary. I got other stuff I can do that with right now.
Yeah, sure.
But all that said, someone like you is inspiring to me because I know that you are not just sourcing everything from this because I know you, that's why like I wouldn't just interview anybody that like is a thrill seeker because some people I think it's like if that's everything then let's have some talks maybe about other stuff. But I'm just fascinated. So thank you for letting me rant there for a second.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you actually touched on a lot of talking points that I do with the workshops. It's like, you know how you talked about like being afraid of talking to your boss or like scared of missing a plane when you get to the airport or these like, so your body doesn't know the difference. That's the thing. Your body, when it's attacked by a lion or missing a flight and you're really scared about missing, it's the same physiological, neurological experience. Like maybe some like different levels here and there, but at its core, it's the same thing. You're sweating. Your blood is pumping all to these big muscles to make sure you can run. That heightened sense, that like shallow breathing, all these symptoms that you're experiencing are the same, whether it's that fear or that kind of fear. The more you put yourself through scary situations, which in my opinion needs to be once or twice a year in your life where you do something scary. So this kind of stuff doesn't bleed into your everyday life, and you don't experience, and even if you do experience these moments of fear, like a big part of the philosophy of what I'm doing is like, I'm not telling you not to be afraid. Not at all. I'm actually saying, please go be afraid. Like be as afraid as possible within a safe realm, and activate all these things in your body. But if you're doing those while also releasing what's going on, so once you go into that state, all this stuff is pent up. So like if you get a text or if you're scrolling on reels and you go through that fight or flight response and you feel fear or whatever, or you get a flinch, your body is now like compartmentalized all this energy, and then you've done nothing with it. And now it's stored, and now it's like that shake, it's that tremor, it's like that anxiety with the boss, it's the anxiety with like, oh, someone didn't respond to my text, and these things that are like, you said also about Ziegler talking about like the fear not necessarily being there, but so a lot of people it's there. It's like it could be perceived fear or not, or it could be like completely illusionary. But if you're hanging off the side of a cliff, super reasonable to be afraid, dude. Like I'm not gonna tell you don't be scared. I'm telling you let's go do something scary.
Yeah.
Stay alive by the end of it.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be going and like. I've seen videos before where people are like super high up on skyscrapers and they're jumping, and doing shit. For some people, I have a client that I started working with, and it's amazing. And I haven't never done this, but for him, and he had a really good experience with it. He went and did one of those fire walks. Like for someone that could be a massive fear that if you had the proper guidance and yada yada, that could be something.
The scale is huge because it could just be having a conversation.
I just have one more. I want to let you flow, but just one more to add in here is for like a lot of dudes and women, but let's say dudes that want to date, they want to approach women, but they have this body fear of just saying something to them.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
could be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The more like the same principles apply to that as like climbing a sea cliff with no ropes. Because the
Hmm.
more you do each one, the better you'll get at it as far as your the regulation of your response. That's what I'm after. I'm not after, like I said, I'm not after not having you feel afraid. I want you to feel afraid, but I want you to be able to regulate that, whether it's through your breathing, whether it's visualization, whether it's through exposure, whether it's there's so many ways to deal with it, and people deal with it differently. That's the part I was kind of alluding to earlier. It's like I'm the kind of guy that I have to jump. Other people, you got to talk them through it. You got to tell them what's happening in their body. Why are my hands shaking? Why am I breathing like that? Some people like myself and some of the people I've worked with, they're the kind of you need to like push, like really like amp them up and like really get that blood flowing. Other people you really gotta just calm them down and just talk and keep your voice at a base level and just hear them out. I've one of the ones that like really stuck out for me to that allowed me to really like tailor my approach was on one of the trips that I do. It's like we climb these sea cliffs with no ropes, and it's not as I mean it sounds crazy, but it's a lot safer than it sounds. Um, there was this girl that was like really afraid of getting on the wall, and she would. So we go on this really big dhow boat. It's like this traditional Omani boat, and we carve through the sea. It's a fjord. It's in an area called Musendem. It's its own peninsula, and the beauty of that place is, for a little caveat, is like it's a fjord, which means that everything that we climb has at some point been at the bottom of the ocean, and through tectonic plates smashing into each other, these mountains that were underneath the ocean are now up in the air, and we're climbing like periods of history. There's like all these subsets of minerals from like Jurassic Age, all these different timelines, and you're like climbing history. It's beautiful, right? And I that's what I told the people, and that's what everyone was really excited to get on, and people were climbing. And you go with this like little speedboat, you get onto the rock, you climb. I demonstrated, a bunch of people went on. Then this girl she just sat down in the boat and would just kind of like look at everybody climbing, but I didn't want to push her outside of what made her comfortable. I would just talk to her. I would just be like, hey, like, what's going on? And she'd be like, oh, I don't think I'm wearing the right thing, and I don't think I have the right shoes, and I don't think I have this. And I was like, all right, let's like go through these one by one. And, we just talked about each point. And she was like, oh, actually, it's probably all right. And I was like, it's ready. The wall's right here. You got a little bit of time before we have to leave. And she was like, okay. I was like, I'll hold your hand through the experience. She's like, cool. She gets up, and she had told me before we left, she was like, I'm not going to climb today. She had already placed that thought in her mind. And by the end of the trip, she was climbing. And when she got onto the wall, I saw the fear kick in her eyes. I saw that, oh my God, like I've committed, and now I'm on this like wall. It's not that high. She's like maybe a meter off the ground. Like it's not really high up, but in her mind, it's kilometers and kilometers, miles and miles of height. And when I was in the water talking to her, and she completely shut down. She was like looking at her Apple Watch, checking her pulse. She's freaking out, and which is again like reasonable to some extent. So then I got back on the boat. I went up next to her, and then I climbed to where she was, and I sat, and we talked for like 25 minutes, dude. We're sitting on like the side of a cliff, and I'm just chatting to her. And by the end of it, she was like, once we went through, you remember we talked about a lot of pattern interrupts? I did a lot of those talking to her. And then she kind of like through the interruptions forgot that she was afraid, and through the conversation forgot that she was afraid of all of what's going on. And I talked to her through the breathing, and we just did some deep breaths, and we looked, and I was like, go. And she was like, whew,
Yeah.
just jumped.
Yeah.
And I jumped immediately after her, like right next to her, and I came out of the water. And when she came out, the glow and the smile on her face, and the exuding like light
Yeah.
beaming off of her
Yeah.
was like, dude, this is why I do this. Like she was smiling like with her heart, her whole heart. And we got up on the boat, and she's psyched, and she's like, thank you so much. I would have never done this without you, la la. And I'm like, no, you would have probably, but I'm glad I sped it up. And she was like, I need to tell you that I drowned when I was a kid. Like she
Huh.
drowned in a pool when she was a kid.
Oh, wow.
And like they took her out of the water, like full on CPR, mouth to mouth, and like brought her back to life. Like she had like a proper near death experience with the water. So she had it. I didn't know that until after, and I was like, wow, like you're incredibly brave. Like she's like, I'm like, you don't understand like the feat that you've just accomplished. You know, like this is something. She's like, I'm not. She's like, I'm too scared to jump in the pool. Like when I get to the pool and I look at the water, I can't jump in. You've convinced me to jump off a cliff. This is ridiculous. And just asking her questions. How does it feel? What are you doing now? And she's like, I've been trying to deal with fear my whole life. Like she's done Everest base camp, but wouldn't jump into a pool. She's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
But then again, it made me dive deep into the whole fear thing that we were talking about, how everybody responds differently, how we all deal differently with it. But she was fascinating. She was like a massive like reason as to why I do the work that I do. I do these workshops, these trips on these places, dealing with fear through different variations of. I'm not gonna call it therapy. It's more like just like living.
No, maybe it's a version of exposure therapy in a way.
I think you might say that, like a neuroplasticity detailing. I don't know. I'm just saying stuff. But
well,
yeah.
I mean, it's I think we're in a world now where you don't really need to necessarily put like a perfect title on it. You know what I mean? Like you help people around their fears and their sense of self your unique way.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I first got the idea, I kind of the reason why I was telling you the Alex Honnold story, because I had the dream where I was falling. I woke up, and my first thought was that movie scene, and then I went into the thought process and the fear and my experience, and boom, 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 and then I liked the idea, but I was still not dismissive. I had a lot of resistance to like, is this like something that I can do? Is this like, is this real? Like, is this something that I can really pursue? After trying to be a lawyer, and then now completely shifting my universe into something that I loved and something that was truly rewarding for me. I had a lot of resistance, I had a lot of doubts, and then in that moment, it really solidified the experience for me of like, oh, like this is larger than yourself, like even if it's just that one person that I worked with, and it's been many more, thankfully, through different workshops and different trips, and also the products that we make that work with all this. I'll get into that later, but I was like, yeah, this feels right, versus what I felt when I was being a lawyer. Like this feels right. Like even though I'm not making nearly as much money as I did.
You didn't have like a fucking plan, but
Zero.
But you knew
Zero.
it felt right.
This came to me in a dream, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but all of this came to me in a dream. Not the entire thing that I've manifested, but the notion that I can work on this. That's where it came from. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly relate in my way with like whenever I had my first discovery call, which was probably 6 to 8 months before you and I originally met a few years back. I just remember in it, and then after it, I was like, dude, yes, this is what some version of this, yeah. Right? And from that moment on, you could, no matter how many rationally minded people was it, well, I know that's your passion, but maybe go get a regular job while you're fit. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep following this, and I'm so thankful I did. And I'm sure that you are equally thankful that you did. And perhaps this is a good moment to kind of go into, what are the offers that you have with Lawza in terms of cliff, whatever, or otherwise,
I mean, it's kind of started off on a small scale, obviously, because I'm a one-man band. So I've done initially the trip to this place I told you about in Musendam. So I've gone on these trips before, and I've been climbing for a long time, so I had the experience to know the spots, know how to do this safely, and also I had the background of dealing with fear and all the background of what I studied for that specific like genre of the work. And I've also done the workshops of like indoor work, where these ones are a bit more controlled environments. Like that one is a controlled environment, but not as much as an indoor climbing gym would be, where we sit down and We explain what's going on, like I said, from a neurological perspective, the neuroplasticity of interacting with this fear, understanding it, coming to terms with it, getting a grip and doing it anyway. And then once we, find that moment of hesitation, that moment of fear, and just switch the body from off balance to on balance just through exposure and repetition. So like you go up on the wall, before we go up on the wall, we talk about visualization of the climb before you even get on it. You imagine yourself up there, you do the moves, the breathing to keeping yourself controlled, not over gripping, not freaking out. And if you feel like you're going to hesitate, I tell you, don't go up. If you feel like you're not going to commit, don't do it. And what we're trying to do is just tackle that split second where fear tries to negotiate. Tries to tell you like, oh, maybe no, maybe that's not. You know what I'm saying? Again, this thing is what has kept us alive from the dawn of time. This moment that makes you like check whether, oh, that might be too hot. That thing might kill you. That is important. It's primal for a reason. It's instinctual for a reason. I'm not trying to turn it off. I'm just trying to recalibrate it. Instead of it freaking you out,
that's right.
It's just like you can hold the reins on it a little bit and be like, okay, I'm feeling this right now. I understand what's happening in my body from a physiological perspective, and now I can respond way quicker. So the flinch response, like if someone throws something at you, you go up like this. That's instinctual. Every human being on the planet, even a dog, whatever, you throw something, it's gonna do this. That is the same thing. So I just try to get you from this into like now you're ready. That moment from I'm scared to I'm ready. I just shorten the time span between those two things.
Yeah, I think in large part, it's, there's 1,000 paths up the mountain, right? But this is like yet another door into essentially central nervous system regulation as a whole, right? So it's another fascinating door into it. And like, I talk a lot about your triggers are your teachers, no matter where they are in your life. Like my whole thing, like you don't need to go do a bunch of climbing and stuff necessarily, but just operate as your triggers are your teachers. And some of them are going to be echoes of fear. Some of them are going to be echoes of shame or guilt or anger or whatever. But no matter what it is, the more you practice presence with it, reframe it and tell a new story or do some kind of a somatic practice, breathing technique, yada, yada, you are gradually rewiring your brain in real time. And so what you're speaking about is yet another door in to kind of the same thing,
Yeah. All these ancient texts that discussed about all the stuff that, you and I have talked through a lot, and a lot of the work that I've done with all these people, there's so many of these self-help books that talk about these things in a less nuanced way, where it's I'm not trying to hate on self-help books. I'm just saying that like it's kind of extracted all these points that we've just discussed now and put them separately in different things, but as a practice, the active rewiring of it can sometimes be conscious and could be largely subconscious. Like in my experience, before I realized what was really going on, it was mostly subconscious. Like to even trace it back before the diving, like, and that's like where, because it's like relative to the work I was doing, other instances of growing up in a place that was like pretty rough around the edges. I grew up in Jordan, and it wasn't like easy being a kid there, like it was pretty rough. In school, fights kick off, what I'm saying? In the neighborhood, fights kick off, things happen, and it wasn't like the safest of environments. So you kind of had to be on alert. You had a higher sense of alertness and fear response. And you go through a lot of experiences where, you could get hurt, and that fear increases or decreases depending on that and how much exposure you put onto it. But to fast forward a little bit onto that, my experience started off something really small, like the game Batman Arkham Asylum. So it was on Xbox. Anyway, it's a Batman game. It came with the Joker. It came with the Joker poster. And I remember opening it and like freaking out, like closing it as a kid, like really, really young, and doing like this. It's terrifying. The Joker was super scary to me. And then like a couple weeks later, I was like opening the game up again to play it and feeling that fear bubble up. I took that poster out and I stuck it next to my bed. Now I'm like maybe 10, but I stuck it next to my bed. I just put like tape on it. So every day I went to sleep, and every night I went to sleep, and every day I woke up, that's what I saw, until it became my favorite character on the planet.
Huh.
It stopped being my biggest like enemy and the thing I'm afraid of the most, into like someone that I can like look at without experiencing any fear and just try to understand it for what it was. And then fast forward other experiences as like a kid, being in a farm and a dog like from a different farm like running at me and my cousins, and my response was to run at the dog. And it's like it's pretty fucking absurd, because like I mean, I don't know how absurd it is, but the normal person you would talk to would be like, okay, that's not the wisest of decisions. But I had like my cousins, my brothers are all younger than me, and this like instinctual like protective thing came out where I wasn't thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna protect my people. It was probably like, wow, like coming out with a spear, kind of. It was so primal. So the fight or flight, sometimes you pick fight.
Yeah.
And I think my body gravitated more towards fight, and that's why I was so obsessed with dealing with fear. Now, luckily, that dog, the farmer, came out like a split second before it reached me, and just get like a big whistle, and it stopped, and my heart dropped.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I survived that one, and then fast forward into like the most. I think we've talked about this, but the most intense experience that I think took all these experiences from before and everything that I've been building since was I got into a train crash where my train hit another train moving at full speed, and I flew up in the air, and it was like a movie
Oh
scene
shit.
when a plane is falling and like baggage is flying and people are screaming, and it's like mayhem, it's life or death kind of thing. And I got lucky that like my seat broke off from the train, and it fell in the center between where the two seats are. So now I'm like, I can have something to hold on to while the train is inside a tunnel smacking into the other train. Let me get some light on, because I feel like my face is disappearing. So I'm holding on. I'm hitting the train, hitting the tunnel, and like at the same time that I fell in the center, the person that fell in front of me was a man in his early 60s, maybe late 50s, full white head and white beard. And, I was at the time 20 maybe, and we fell in front of each other in the center, and everything around us was just destruction. But we were the only ones holding on. And there was a moment where we looked at each other and had a peaceful nod and like smile.
Mm-hmm.
Looked at each other and said like it's been real. Thank you for coming to the show. Kind of look.
Yeah.
Where I'd been like early in my life, and he'd been late in his life, and we were two men on different journeys, but met in this moment and accepted that it's been a good ride, regardless of how long it's been or experiences lived, and accepting that it was over. For that, even if it was for a split second, was one of the most liberating experiences of my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, the train eventually stopped, and everybody kicked into sheer human panic, and they were shoving and screaming and running to the doors. And I stood up on one of the remaining seats, and I shouted in a decibel I didn't know I possessed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I could reach that voice, like that that volume. And I said, essentially, I'm not going to scream right now on the call, but I said, like, calm down. The only way we get out is if we sit down and stay calm.
Yeah.
And all these people in a full-on carriage just sat down and listened to some kid telling them to relax, because they just needed one voice of reason to say, like, let's breathe.
Yeah.
Eventually, I managed to grab one of these. There's two of these kids, and like they weren't kids. They were like rugby players. They were huge, and I was like, "Yo, come with me." And we ended up like, they did most of the work, but we pried the doors open to like make sure people can escape in case something was on fire or whatever. And we got out, and then rescue teams came anyway. But everything in that, like the next day, I didn't know what had happened. I still like woke up in kind of like a trance. Like I didn't know what was going on. But after like months and years of reflection, it felt like, as cringy as it sounds, I had been preparing for that moment through all the experiences, which I didn't get into the crazy stuff of growing up in Jordan. I just said like a little bit of highlights, but everything had led up to all these moments where I've been afraid to now the moment where I should have been the most afraid, where my life is about to end. I
Yeah.
did not feel any of the fear, and it was
Yeah.
pure acceptance and allowed me to even stay calm enough to get us out of it. And we were still talking at the time, and I was still working on law. I hadn't processed. And
Yeah.
then, when I had the dream and everything linked, and I was thinking through all these events, and I was thinking like, you've already acquired, what years of work into this, kind of by sheer luck and coincidence of just what
Mhm.
the flow of life has moved me towards. And that's why I'm obsessed with this. That's why I love doing this stuff. It's because like it feels incredibly real for me.
It's close
And
to you. It's very, very close to you. It's close to your heart.
it is very much so, yeah. And the medium that I chose was climbing because it's like you can really activate that moment of like, oh, I'm scared right now, like pretty quickly.
So that's the dominating quote unquote offer with Loza is doing the climbing events, but then also you have some kind of gear that you made as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so I got some right here. It's pretty dark. So
Yeah.
we make like climbing chalk, but
Okay.
I'll give you all the Instagram stuff and people can check all this out.
Yeah.
But the reason the way this was engineered was to really focus on the sensory approach, where that I told you that moment where fear tries to negotiate. That's
Hmm.
usually just before a climb. Sometimes it's mid climb, but the last deliberate act you take before you set off on a climb is you chalk your hands. And
Hmm.
there's like a ritualistic aspect, just like I can't find an analogy right now. I have a bunch, but anyway, it's like a ritualistic act where you breathe and you put your hand through this chalk to prepare like your senses to the experience that you're about to go into. So this is like sourced from like super high quality magnesium carbonate. So like from a performance perspective, it's at a very high level, but also it's like milled down and like sifted through to make sure it's only like super soft, like silky smooth particles. That when you grab onto them, it kind of like attaches onto your hand, and it doesn't give you that feeling. You know when you scratch against a chalkboard, and you have
Hmm.
that when you other chalks have like these chunky pieces, and when you crush them, it kind of gives you that experience. And when it goes against your nails, it gets stuck under your nails. So it was kind of created for that moment.
So
That's what
it's one of those things that you kind of created this for you.
I think so. Yeah, to a large
Like
extent. I mean,
it was a product that you would find benefit in.
yeah, I think I was trying to solve a problem that I had, and
Yeah.
now that I'm
Yeah.
selling it, people love it, and it's like selling inside gyms, and people buy it, and I'm like, whoa, this is pretty crazy.
That's amazing, dude.
I'm super
That's
grateful
awesome.
for that. I'm super grateful that people even like when I talk to them about this, they're like, oh yeah, man, like I can see that, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you were talking earlier, that there was moments in the journey where there was basically right, like the inner critic
Oh
and
yeah,
imposter syndrome and stuff. And so when
oh
you
yeah.
get that kind of feedback, it definitely helps solidify the realness of it a little bit more.
Mm.
Now, are you also like? Are people able to go and book time to go do an event with you, like on the
Yeah.
internet? They got to fly to where you are, basically, kind of
Yeah,
deal.
yeah. For now, I mean, the offering for now is within the region that I'm working in, but the plans is to expand into the whole world, and I
Yeah,
want to
beautiful,
do workshops and
beautiful.
and work with people from everywhere. Like luckily, because the place I'm in, the region I'm in, has like a lot of different people from a lot of different places. You get to work with so many different nationalities and backgrounds, and it's always so fascinating to see how different people deal with it. Like on my last trip, there was about 15 people. 13 of them were from different countries
Hmm.
all over
Wow.
the world, like Colombia, like, Poland, Ukraine, like the States, British, Singaporean, Lebanese, Brazilian. It was bonkers to see this many people from different parts of the world get on this boat, and just this strong sense of camaraderie kicks in, and everybody's like, they're on this mission together. It's an operation, and we're carving through these fjords together and like climbing these cliffs, and people dig it, man. People like they go through like a proper journey. It's a full day experience. Now there will be other things on offer with some multiple days and expeditions and more deeper work, and there's going to be a lot that comes in the future. This is at a very elementary stage, but even at this stage, I'm incredibly grateful that I can do this, honestly.
Yeah, dude. Well, I'm incredibly grateful that we got to dive into a lot of this stuff. There's one thing that, there's many things we could probably talk about more. And again, maybe we can do this again in the future. But I would be remiss if I didn't check in on, are you going to be doing any more of those, like, where you get your backpack and you just fucking trek for God knows how long?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. That's also a big part of this. For context of the people listening, I walked across country in the UK for charity, and then after my walk, I ran a half marathon, and that was one of the most like intense / beautiful experiences of my life, where I met people that I'm never gonna forget and slept in places that I'm never gonna forget, and it was a real experience. That the weather didn't let off. It rained every single day. Blisters and bleeding and pain and back pain and just like, a lot going on. But it was definitely one of the most educational experiences of my life.
And liberating, right?
For sure. Like, it's just becomes, there's very limited worry besides all the real worries, like the fundamentals. But it's only like, when you click your nervous system into only fundamental fears, like food, shelter, and water, it's oh man, you just have such a different thinking process.
Yeah, well, it's not the same thing, but that show alone, I love that show alone because you get such a wide range of probably the most real and raw character development you can find on TV, because it's just those people with cameras out there, and they're like, here's a few things, now you figure it out there, and you see like the broad difference in how people react, right? Some people end up folding, and they're the ones like, I'm gonna be out here, and then 2 weeks in, I'm fucking, and then other people, they have the most liberating self-discovery experience of their life, in those moments. So
and the alone factor, that's the whole point of the show. It's called Alone. The alone factor is a double-edged sword for sure. Like, you get to really dive deep and become really introspective throughout this experience, but also you kind of lose your mind a little bit, because we need people. As much as not everybody, as much as a lot of people think that that you're doing it on your own, it's like you're not. Like, you're standing on the shoulders of giants that brought you to where you are. Nobody's self-made, and you got to where you got because of the amalgamation of all the people that you were.
That's right.
Lucky enough to meet, and they raised you up. Not just your family. I don't mean just family. It could be anybody. Someone smiling down the street at you, that person contributed.
Yeah, and if you're on a self-development journey and you're really on it, you're going to learn from God knows how many different speakers and authors and coaches and whatever, right? So it's And Bruce Lee, right? He says, take what resonates, discard what doesn't, and make it uniquely your own.
I like that one very much.
That's the good shit. Good old Bruce. Well, in closing, I would like to say, just to anybody that's made it this far in us hanging out, super grateful for anybody that has. And I think I've already kind of put my thoughts in here, but just being that it is on my podcast, I love the concept of going to your fears, but this isn't to say that if you're in a rough place, you should just go jump off a plane or something. Maybe you should. Maybe that is your thing. But it's not saying, like, go fucking crazy or whatever, but you know, maybe you should go to one of those gyms where you can get strapped up and climb once, or go do a fire walk, or yeah, speak out to a woman or a man you find attractive when your inner narrative says, oh, they won't. Who cares if they say no? You're going to grow from the experience of, you know, going towards your fears, feeling those emotions, releasing them, recognizing that they too will pass, because we're just constantly changing and interchanging emotional states. But there's definitely value in going to your fears.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely, and like you said, I think that's a fantastic point. It's like it doesn't have to be drastic. It's like the drastic measure tends to bring sometimes faster results, as long as obviously there's the safety elements and you go with people who know what they're doing. You don't just try to do this yourself. But it could be as simple as like going to like a stand-up comedy club and like booking it to like go up live and
Yep.
having zero jokes prepared.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is terrifying. Or like going for a swim. Like there's people have like specific things that they're afraid of, and you could try to deal with those specific things, or you can just go do other stuff that at least get you into that space that, okay, I'm dealing with something scary. It's not like a phobia or like something that is completely shutting me down, but at least I'm making progress in other areas, and it bleeds into this. Like you're scared of talking to your boss, send the email. Try it out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That you like that girl in class, just say hi.
Yeah.
Just say hi.
Yeah, that's what, if nothing else, right? Like in your day-to-day life now, right? Like where in these micro moments of the day, to varying external factors and situations, where does the mind or the body default to fear? And what can be potentially learned, released, or seen, you know, in that moment by going to it that way? So there's like so many different ways to utilize the value of going towards your fear. Dude, it's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you, man.
Dude,
I
bye.
will make sure that we put links and whatnot for people. And then maybe you can even share a few videos of some cool shit, and I can put some like overlays at certain points in this
Oh yeah.
recording
Hell yeah.
to kind of, so that would be cool, right?
That would be awesome. Yeah, I've got loads of stuff I can send you. 100%.
Beautiful.
I would
Beautiful.
love
All right.
that.
Sweet, man. Well,
That was
any
fast.
more words before we sign off? And obviously you and I can hang out for a second after that.
Any more words? I just want to say that I'm grateful, honestly. Making the decision to leave a pretty set piece life where you can kind of have some predictability about what's going on, and diving really deep into the unknown, which is one of my biggest fears, which is like, you know, not being successful, like a fear of failure, and
Yep.
tackling that head on, and now translating it into this new format of a business where I get to do what I love and get people to do what I love with me.
And
I-
positively impact the world.
I hope so, you know. And
Oh, you already are, brother.
Thank you, man. You and I both. And yeah, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful I got to meet you, and like there was like that moment of that shift in my life up until now, where so much has shifted, and now I act with a lot more intentionality and like obsession in the process, rather than just like attaching my self-esteem to a certain outcome of success. And yeah, man, thank you to everybody. Much love to you all.
Amen, brother. Thank you, man. Thank you. And thank you, anybody that's been hanging out with us for this conversation. Feel free to comment any questions, whether Spotify or wherever this ends up being. And who knows, maybe next time we hang out, we might be able to bring some of that forward. But if nobody comments, that's fine as well. This is amazing. It's going to sit in the interweb ecosphere for a very long time. And I'm very thankful for that.
Likewise, man. All the best. Much love to you.
Hell yeah,
Stay
much
safe,
love.
man.
See y'all later.
Peace.